עזבו וחלק פשוט משתאים במקום אחר. אבל מיישובי ההר, אילון, חניתה, כל היישובים בהר, מלא עזבו. איפה הרקורד? record to the cloud. Hi everyone, Tashi Delek. We are in English now, not in Hebrew. I'm so glad to see you all here. Geshe will join us in a minute. I will post the link for the Dana, so those of you who can do it, so we really appreciate it. We really need it. And that's all for today. And put your camera on because Geshe really asked it. Sorry about my English, but she really asked every time, can you speak with the people, because she wants to see and she wants to see that people understand. And then if the camera is off, she doesn't see if you say with your head, yeah, I understand or not, or so please try to do it. Meantime, nothing to say.
Just before the English part, Dalit shared with us in Hebrew. She lives in the north and part of Israel, and they were bombed all day. It was a really difficult day today. So tough samsara at the moment. Thank God for the Dharma.
But there was something very nice that we saw. The people that been in the bomb shelter and outside the bomb shelter, the birds, they are not afraid like it was in the beginning. They're still singing and flying, and they are not, because in the beginning there was silence, and you couldn't find birds, and all the cat was crazy and the dog was crazy. And now there it's like, you know, like someone who do like this. So, איך אומרים רגילים?
They are used to it.
They are used to it, so you have a lot of birds and everything, so it's very nice.
You want to come to stay with me in Tel Aviv?
No, it's okay.
Hi, Geshe.
Hi, dear Geshe.
Hi, sorry, I'm a little late.
Just a moment, because I need to do a co-host.
You can come and stay with me, Dalit.
Thanks, Elisheva. My father falling down yesterday on, how do you say מסור in English?
Sprained his ankle? Sprained?
No, איך אומרים מסור באנגלית? מסור.
Sprained?
The thing that you cut, grass and everything. So he's falling down and he cut his half of his hand.
Oh.
And the ambulance wasn't in the area, so it took something like half an hour until they took him.
Oh.
But now I think that he's okay. He's old, so I was.
He's in hospital?
No, he didn't agree to stay there. But tomorrow he will go and they will check that everything is okay. And because he got a problem with his heart. So he got a medical that doesn't allow the blood to
clot. To clot. Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of blood that go out.
Oh, he lost a lot of blood. Okay.
My English is so terrible today.
No, that's fine. No, I totally understood.
So he started to have the anaphylactic shock, but it's okay. They save him and everything, so he's okay now.
Okay. Good to hear.
He's smiling.
Okay. All right, great. Well, let's start then, as usual, with short meditation. And then visualize in the space in front of you your own Lama or your Lamas appearing in the form of Buddha Shakyamuni. While you're surrounded by each and every sentient being. And then especially focusing on sentient beings. Try to remember what we have in common with every living being. In terms of the nature of our mind. And the instinctive wish to be free from suffering. And let's generate a sincere feeling of closeness and care for each and every sentient being in the form of affectionate love. And that caring fondness for sentient beings then gives way to great compassion. Sincerely wishing for all sentient beings to be free from any kind of samsaric experience, any kind of suffering, and of course the causes that give rise to the suffering. Which then gives way to the altruistic attitude. The mind that is determined, that takes personal responsibility for the welfare of sentient beings. Thinking, I will do whatever I can to help sentient beings overcome suffering and its causes. If not in this life, then in future lives. But since that is realistically only possible once we become enlightened, let's then, for the welfare of each and every sentient being, generate the mind of enlightenment, the aspiration or even determination to attain the enlightened state of a Buddha. Which is also our motivation for continuing our study of the Precious Garland. So to deepen our motivation, let's recite the prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha. to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. All right. Okay, so wait a minute. Where is the mouse? Okay, it's not working. Oh, there it is. All right. We'll start as we usually do. We start with Lamrim, which is beautiful because all the topics of this particular text, they all relate back to the Lamrim, which makes it so much easier. I mean, all the topics in general do, but here in this case, it's more obvious. So thinking of the future, we meditated on death, in preparation, of course, for death, to take away first the fear of dying, but then not just that. I mean, even if possible, generating a sense of looking forward to what comes afterwards, which is only possible if we're prepared in the right way. But just as we may look forward to the next day or next week and so forth. So in the same way, just be open, let go of our attachments as far as possible. And in a way, well, it's also knowing that we separate from people, yes, but it's a temporary separation because we have relationships with the same people over and over again in different ways, but we do meet the people of this life again. Sometimes they're very close to us and sometimes they're not. But the point being that this is not finite. This is not the end of everything, but rather it's a new beginning. So to remember death is such a powerful, it's one of the most powerful meditations, death, the meditation on death or the death meditation. And then look beyond what comes after. Be prepared. So right now it's a bit like we live as if there were only today, no tomorrow. So it's a bit like today, I think I've mentioned this before, it's like this life and we don't think ahead. But actually, the way we do live today in reality is we do prepare for the future every day. I mean, we brush our teeth, we go shopping to have enough food for the next days to come. So we have that attitude anyway, even long term in terms of like old age. So in the same way, it's essential to prepare for the future. If we're unprepared, then death is really scary. If we're prepared, then okay, it's just another change. Okay. But then, of course, considering what happens in the future is so important, and to be wary of the suffering we can experience. So instead of meditating on imagining our own death, well, you could also do that because that relates to Jimmy's question today. But let's move on to the next subject, also of what expects us. What kind of terrible suffering could we experience? If we are able to consider the lower realms, then we should definitely give that a try, to think that there are states we just can't see them. Our sense consciousnesses don't have the capacity to perceive them. Science hasn't come to that point to establish their existence, although scientifically it's definitely possible to establish it, but our human scientists at this point just can't do it yet. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, we don't know. But the point is to at least consider the possibilities of other forms of life, which is characterized by incredible suffering. Do we want this or not? And to relate it back to ourselves. So to think of hellish experiences of incredible pain, incredible suffering, and fear, and terror, etc. So something we may even experience, or we may see in a similar way in the human existence. think of examples of people suffering so terribly, especially people with mental illnesses that have these experiences that for them are extremely real. So, of course, also with the mind of compassion, considering their suffering, at the same time as thinking this could happen to us. It's all in our own hand or in our own mind, basically. It all depends on our own mind. Okay, so please, I would like you to ask, and this relates nicely to higher rebirth, as we're talking about higher rebirth as one of the goals, to pay extra attention to that. And as to the death meditation, well, let's first go to the questions. Okay, let me just display them. Where are they? Oh, here they are. Okay. Oh, Jimmy, did you raise your hand?
Another thing, can we get a recording of Shandong Rinpoche's teaching that you translate?
Samdong Rinpoche teaching.
Samdong Rinpoche last week.
Yeah, last week. But the thing is, like, well, I only translated into German. So this was the official teachings of His Holiness. His Holiness had a very strong cold and so couldn't teach, and Samdong Rinpoche taught instead of His Holiness. So as I usually translate into German, I translated Samdong Rinpoche's teachings into German.
Okay.
And only 3 days before we were informed that there's going to be a text. So that's why I had to translate the text into German.
So it's on the Dalai Lama's?
Yes.
It's on the Dalai Lama's. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It should be on His Holiness's website. All right, so I hope you can see the question. This is a question. These are 3 questions Orit asked, and I never answered them. They won't take long, but I think they're important questions. Okay, first question. Are the last 2 chapters of the 100,000 verses still in the possession of the Nagas? I don't know. It's as simple as that. I have no idea. I suppose so. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but I don't know. The second is, well, thinking about what you said regarding renunciation. Yeah, I talked about as part of the practice to become a Buddha. So before we can generate bodhicitta, we have to, of course, generate great compassion. And that must be preceded. So great compassion is really an affectionate mind that wishes for all sentient beings, not just to get rid of what we recognize to be suffering, but to get rid of any kind of samsaric experience. But before we ourselves, before we have the wish ourselves to be free from all the samsaric, the very limiting or limited experiences, before we wish them for other sentient beings, then we need to wish for ourselves to be free from these experiences. And that, in other words, is renunciation. So in the sutras, it often says, well, the Tathagata Arhat, Samyak Sambuddha, Shakyamuni, so Tathagata Arhat, he's called an Arhat. So why is the Buddha an Arhat and not an Arya? Well, first of all, he's also called an Arya. In fact, the Tibetan word for Buddha, for the person Buddha that is often used is Sangye Papa. Sangye means Buddha, Papa means Arya, so Arya Buddha. So it just depends on the context. But is he also an Arhat? What does it mean to be an Arhat? What does it mean to be an Arhat? Does this mainly refer to getting rid of certain limitations, or does it refer to something else to be an Arhat?
Well, I discussed it a little bit with Annie Losang, and we got to the conclusion that you can view it from both ends. Like to begin with, what his aspirations are, like before he becomes an Arhat, and then the results of elimination.
Okay, so is a Buddha an Arhat or not? Was the Buddha first an Arhat?
Well, it depends. If you take a look like from the beginning, like his motivation was just for self-liberation.
No. What does it mean to be an Arhat? Does an Arhat mean you have to be self-liberated?
As far as I understand, yes.
No. An Arhat doesn't mean you have to be self-liberated. An Arhat means you have to eliminate something. What is it? What do you have to eliminate to become, what is the instead of being a Buddha?
We said the afflictive obscuration.
Yes, the afflictive obscurations, they have to be eliminated. Now, there is a difference between, and so now let me ask you, in order to eliminate, so what does the Buddha have to eliminate?
It needs to also eliminate the cognitive obscuration.
Right. So before eliminating the cognitive obscurations, what does the Buddha have to eliminate?
The afflictive.
So does that mean every Buddha must be an arhat?
That's why I'm saying if you only look from the result, then also because he eliminates both of them. But if
Exactly.
you look from
Exactly. Yeah. He has to, the Buddha has to eliminate both of them. Sorry, already, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What did you want to say?
No, like for me at the beginning, I thought it's like the Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha. It's like something like you decide in the beginning. Like
Yes,
what
you do.
What do you want to be? So the Buddha chose to be a Buddha and not to be
Yes,
an arhat. But
that's
yeah, on the
true.
way, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. On the way. That's it. As like as a side effect. It's not the main goal, but yes, so a Buddha definitely has to become an arhat first. Sometimes I compare this to, well, if you live in India, but I'm not sure the comparison is that good, but I compare it to a journey. So I usually say when you travel from Dharamsala to Delhi and then continue to Bombay. I mean, nowadays, I guess, well, if you take a plane, but let's say you take the train, I think you still have to travel via Delhi. So you have two types of practitioners, the ones who want to go to Bombay right from the beginning and the ones who want to go to Delhi. But even if you go to Bombay, you have to go through Delhi. It's a bit like that. But what's the difference? Well, the difference is if your original plan was to go to Delhi, you're going to stay there for a while. I mean, you've worked for a long time. I want to go to Delhi. I want to go to Delhi. So then once you get there, you're going to stay there for a while, right? Whereas the person who wants to get to Bombay as quickly as possible, yeah, they have to go through Delhi, but they continue on. So in that way, becoming self-liberated, because otherwise you could ask, well, then just become self-liberated. Buddhas become arhats anyway. Why not become self-liberated? The point is you get stuck in that state. You get stuck in that blissful state of blissful kind of meditative absorption into the cessation of suffering. It's not motivated by attachment, but because that was your goal for so long, and it was so much, it's so determined, everything you did, you're going to stay there in the first time. And so from the point of view of great compassion, it's a waste of time, right? So I think this is really important. And yeah, I wanted to mention this. The next is about the second verse of the Precious Garland here. So this is the Precious Garland, this is the verse, and you have the word Dharma mentioned 4 times here, then again here, here, and here. So her question is, does this refer to the Four Noble Truths? First of all, can the Dharmas be applied to the Four Noble Truths? In other words, truth of suffering, truth of the origin, truth of cessation, and truth of the path. All right, that's your homework. All right, all of you, look at this verse again. We're going to read the explanation of the verse today as part of today's lesson. Anyway, we'll go through it. I'm not going to explain it. Parts of this here is explained. Should I give you a hint? No, I won't give you a hint. Okay, so how many of the Four Noble Truths are, I'll give you this much of a hint. So I'm saying, okay, Four Noble Truths, okay, but which ones of the Four Noble Truths? So it's up to you. Figure out which of these dharmas, if at all, refer to any of the Four Noble Truths, and then if any, which of the Four Noble Truths? Truth of suffering, truth of origin, truth of cessation, or truth of the path. All right. Good luck with that. So Elena, ask you next time. Okay, now next is Jimmy's question on the dissolution at the time of death. This actually works really well because of, well, doing the death meditation right now. And actually we're supposed to do this dissolution, this meditation of the dissolution. But it's easy enough to just do it on your own, other than reading from he prepared here, you don't need to do anything. So here you get the dissolutions. I didn't have the time to send them to Dalit yet because it was a little bit last minute. But anyway, here's just a summary, and I'll send it to Dalit at the end of this class. Here's a summary of these 8 stages of dissolution at the time of death. So what you're going through. The physical signs, of course, there are some physical signs for at least the first 4 stages. There's a certain mental experience. So here the body feels heavy. Then there's the mental consciousness in general becomes unclear and confused. There's a sense of losing stability and grounding. And at certain points in time, there is this vision of like a mirage-like vision, like as if seeing like heat waves in the air. You know, like when you look at a road in the middle of the summer when the sun is at its highest, you see these kind of waves. So like a mirage, it kind of looks like water actually. So anyway, that is the kind of vision you have. And then the water element dissolves with the fire and so forth. So the first 4, the body's still, there's still an experience of the body. And I added the mental experience in the sense of I didn't just add the vision, but also, you know, when there was confusion, like memory and thinking, they weaken and so forth. And there's, of course, a particular vision, like ambers in the night sky and so forth, like sparks or fireflies. Anyway, so these are the visions. And at some point, yeah, during the 5th stage, you don't have, the breathing has stopped. There is no longer any experience of the body. Sense and bodily functions stop completely, and then there's only the mental experience. Oh, there's a dot here that shouldn't be here. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't have time to really go through it again. But yeah, you might want to read that and do the meditation. And so the mental consciousness, what does it perceive? A vision of clear white light, not clear light yet. And at the very end, you have the clear light mind. So the subtlest type of mind. If you go through it, it becomes clear. But this is from the point of view of the tantric path, which is okay. You can do the meditation. Yeah, you don't need to have an initiation for that. It's a good way to prepare for death, actually, to go through these stages. And the reverse process, well, this is at the time of our death. Dying literally means in Buddhism going through these stages. And if your death is a prolonged death, then you go through them step by step, and you may actually follow these different dissolutions. Or if it's a sudden death, of course, it goes much faster and it's harder to follow them. But the more familiar you are with them, the more you can follow them. So this is said to be a really nice way, a really effective way to prepare for death. So when it comes, it's like, oh, okay, death is there. All right, what comes first? First vision, second vision, and you just follow them through. And of course, if you can, enjoy the clear light mind, but not just enjoy it, of course, utilize it by reflecting on emptiness as much as you can. This is not easy. I'm not saying this is easy in any way, but there are Tibetan practitioners, and some of them are not said to be extremely highly advanced, and they can do it. It's a matter of familiarity. Yeah, and it's in a wonderful way to utilize your own death for the practice of the Dharma, because these subtle types of mind are very effective. Anyway, so he wanted to hear about them, or he wanted me to demonstrate some. So here they are, and the reverse process. So basically, the moment of death is when the clear light mind arises. This is the moment of death itself. So when you ask in Buddhist philosophy, what is death? It's the moment when so you're dying. The process of dying is when the dissolution starts. First dissolution, second, third, and so forth. Death is during the eighth dissolution, the eighth mind that arises at the time of the 8th level. That is called the clear light mind, and that is death. Now, you're only dead for a certain time. Ordinary people can be dead for 3 days, right? You're literally in the state of death. So they're in the clear light mind. The clear light mind, their mind has not left the body yet. which is why in some traditions the body's actually left untouched for 3 days. Even in Germany, there are these hospices where in the area I come from, there's an hospice and they keep the body there for 3 days. I don't know the origin of that, but I think it's a common practice. And it's interesting because from a Buddhist point of view, yeah, 3 days you can stay in that clear light mind. And once the clear light mind is over, well, then the reverse process starts. So in the reverse process of the 8 dissolutions after death, mental visions emerge in a sequence that mirrors the dissolutions, moving from the subtlest, most subtle state of consciousness, the clear light mind, back to grosser levels of perception. These stages, starting with the mind of black near attainment, occur during the pardo, the intermediate state that precedes an individual's rebirth. So for us, when we die, we're in a clear light mind, and when death is over, then the black near attainment, which is here in this description, number 7. And then you have the vision of the red increase, and then the vision of, and you go all the way back until you have a coarse consciousness again, but this time in the pardo. Okay, and then even when you die in the pardo, you go through these 8 dissolutions, clear light mind in the pardo, and the moment that death in the pardo is over, you have the black near attainment mind again, which is the first coarser moment in your rebirth. Yeah. So every time you die, it's these 8 in the order I described here. And then when your death is over, it's the 8 in the reverse order. All right. So that is an answer to his first question. And again, it's very good. You see here, meditating on imagining your own death. Well, that's what you imagine, these 8 stages. Anyway, I'll make them available to you tonight. Then the next question he had, where is this next question? All right. Because the person exists as merely labeled, I'm assuming that the person still can be labeled on each of the mental visions. Well, it's not labeled on the mental visions as such. It is labeled on the mental consciousness experiencing these visions. So a person is labeled when you lie there. So now the body has left the mind has left the body. Oh, no, it's still, no, during the forward process of actually dying, then there's of course still the body. And in that case, as the mind dissolves, as the mind becomes subtler and subtler and subtler, well, of course, we can label the person on the basis of this human body and the mind. But then when death is over, so at the moment of death, the person is still in the body. The moment of death, the mind is in the heart chakra, in the area of the heart. Well, anyway, never mind about the whole process, but in the area of the heart, it's fully functioning, the clear light mind. And at that time, the person's body and mind are still connected. The next moment, when that clear light mind of death is over, is the first moment of the pardo, which means there's now the pardo body. So they have a body in the pardo, in the intermediate state. Right? The only time there is no body is if the person is reborn in the formless realm. But other than that, there's always a body, not as coarse as the human body, a subtler body, which is much subtler, which is like a rainbow body. Or no, it's not a rainbow body, but it's like one. You know, it's like it's not made of the coarse substances. But whenever, except for the formless realm, whenever you are in samsara, you always have a body. And from a tantric point of view, you definitely have the subtle energy wind. Therefore, your basis of imputation is always a physical basis, experiencing these visions. So that's the basis of imputation for labeling. I am dying. I'm experiencing the clear light. I'm experiencing the pardo, for instance. Or for another person to label me experiencing the pardo, etc., if they're aware of me doing that. Then about the mind in the final state of the clear light, is it the case that from the final clear light mind, when the mind wavers, when it's about to arise, for most people, because of either attachment or bodhicitta, it's the karmic force as well. Like when you're in the clear light mind of death, wouldn't it be nice to just remain in that state? But it's not going to happen. Now, what is responsible for us as ordinary people, as ordinary beings? Why can we not stay longer than 3 days? Well, because we haven't trained ourselves to remain in that state. Therefore, it's the karmic force. We've accumulated karma. The karma has ripened already. While we're dying, the karma starts to ripen. So this throwing function that it has, like throwing us, propelling us into a next rebirth, well, that started already. And therefore, it's this karmic force that then propels us into a particular intermediate state, which is associated with a particular rebirth. So therefore, it's mainly karma. But attachment, of course, is also involved. And attachment led to the ripening of the karma. So definitely karma is a cause. Can bodhicitta also be a cause? Yes. On a particular level, when you've reached a very high level, let's say you've reached the path of seeing as a bodhisattva, or higher than that as a bodhisattva. Now, when you die, you remain in the clear light mind for longer than 3 days, possibly. It depends on the practitioner. But eventually, this tuktam, it's called in Tibetan, or the clear light meditation, sometimes described as the clear light meditation. We've all heard about it, or many of us have heard about it, how lamas remain, like after they passed away, they remain in that state, possibly for a few weeks or month. Well, a month is a little rare, but like a month. So the body being definitely, no breathing, no blood pressure, nothing. And I've seen it myself because one of our teachers stayed in the clear light mind for 1 week. He was dead. You cannot, we had to do pujas around him for hours, and it was really, really hot and humid. And he wasn't breathing. You can't stop your breath for the length of a puja. He was obviously not breathing, but there was no decay whatsoever. Anyway, so that's possible. But eventually, because of the force of bodhicitta, they'll come out of it. Because in that clear light mind, they won't be able to benefit sentient beings in the most effective way, or indirectly, of course, but not as effectively as if they have when they have a body, which is why they arise from that. So he's totally right. Jimmy's saying, yeah, attachment and bodhicitta. It's those two, or karma. I assume that because an arhat has neither attachment nor bodhicitta, she would be able to abide. No. Arhats, like Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, in the case of arhats, if you mean arhats who have just become self-liberated, they do not abide in the clear light mind. Simply because this is a tantric practice that you can only effectively do. Okay, you can always remain in the clear light, of course, even as ordinary beings, but here we're talking about this blissful clear light, the way he describes it, utilizing it to realize emptiness. And that, with the motivation to become self-liberated, well, maybe it's possible, but in the tantric text, it always talks about doing this meditation with the goal of enlightenment. You don't need to generate the clear light mind actually to become self-liberated. You don't need to. And as I said, it's in the tantric text, it always talks about bodhicitta. So this is not a practice for someone aiming to become self-liberated. It's for it's for Buddhahood. It's for achieving Buddhahood. So, which is I've never heard of an arhat staying in the clear light mind forever, in the clear light state forever. There is this meditation on there's this absorption into the cessation that an arhat has attained, but that's not the clear light mind. So anyways, that would answer that question. Okay. Jimmy, is that okay? Does that make sense? Oh, there's Snake.
Yeah, it helps. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, all right, sure. If you have any follow-up questions, please just write again for next week. Sneh, you had a question?
Yeah, Jimmy's your discussion about Jimmy's questions made me wonder. It's a very strange question, Geshe-ma, but I always wondered, like, when I'm dead and I'm in the bardo, and we do prayers for people who are dead, but when I'm in the bardo, I won't know who I am, right? I mean, I'll have a mind and a body, but me as Sneh is not there. So when people do prayers for Sneh, like, I always wonder, like, where do they go?
Some other person called Sneh in a different universe. Oh, bummer, I missed those. No, I mean, it's the same mental continuum, right? I mean, when prayers are dedicated towards you as Sneh, okay, so you no longer think of yourself as Sneh, and literally, I mean, actually, you're no longer Sneh. You wouldn't be called Sneh, but there's this mental continuum, and there's your karmic connection with these people. Therefore, it still benefits your mental continuum. And the prayers are also not directed at Sneh the way she was, because everyone knows you've passed on. It's like wherever she is. Now, from a Buddhist point of view, you've already assumed that you're in the Pardo, or if you're only a short time in the Pardo, that you've been reborn. In a Buddhist context, it's pretty simple. But then in other religions, or even in a non-religious context, if there's the belief that something continues, then it's focused on that which is still there, right? I mean, I would not direct my prayers if I were to pray for you now. I wouldn't direct her at Sneh the way she looked like right now. I would definitely focus on whatever is left of Sneh. So in that case, it would be your mental continuum. I mean, I would focus on your mental continuum. Yeah.
So it's really the karmic connection between me and the people I know, and the fact that my mental consciousness has this continuity to receive.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You have this karmic connection with them, and that is very powerful. This karmic connection is really, really powerful. This is not every Buddha is beneficial, can benefit us in the same way. We need to have a karmic connection, which also explains the fact why bodhisattvas try to make connections and Buddhas try to make connections with as many people as possible, because they create a connection that for these living beings, it's a karmic connection. Of course, for a Buddha, it's not the same way a karmic connection is not, but it's still this connection, which is often described as karmic connection. So we even have it with enlightened beings, and we have it with other people as well. Which doesn't mean I cannot pray for someone I don't know, because the moment I start thinking about them, I make a connection. And also when you pray for them or have someone pray for them, it's good to give something. Give something. I mean, it's not about the amount. It's not important how much you give. But if you ask in a monastery to have prayers done, sometimes people feel that's a little weird. You're supposed to give something, usually in the form of money. That's easiest. But you're making that karmic connection. You're getting something back. You're giving something. And in that way, you strengthen that connection between the monks and nuns who are doing the prayers and the other person, because of this giving and taking. You know what I mean? It's not absolutely necessary, but it really helps the process. That's all about making connections. And again, if I pray for someone that I don't know, I heard about the first time, I'm making a connection, but just thinking of them in that moment. Just remembering they're a living being having a mind. Even that creates a connection.
So Geshe-ma, just on that,
yeah.
Sorry, just on what you were saying about creating, like strengthening karmic connection. So for example, if I request, let's say, prayers for my mom,
yes.
Have Land of Medicine with her or something, do prayers for my mom, then it is more beneficial for her if I make an offering along with the request for my prayers.
Yes, because you accumulate virtue. You're giving something, for instance, so it's making the connection, of course, also with the Sangha there. Sangha meaning not just monks and nuns, but lay people. But you're also accumulating virtue. You're generous. You're supporting them through this monetary donation. They're also giving something back. So in that way, you create the connection, you accumulate virtue, and you dedicate it towards your mother. And because you have this karmic connection towards your mother, it benefits you greatly, but there's also benefit to your mother, for your mother.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. You're welcome. All right, and now Shmuel. Where is Shmuel? Shmuel, where are you? There you are. Okay. Your question is very good. It's very funny. It's a very philosophical question. So I thought I decided to just write it down. It's a little easier. This is something that's debated about big, not big. All right. So I'll just give you the explanation here. In philosophy, whatever exists is either X or not X. Now, X can be replaced by anything. In Tibetan, they would say this. Whatever exists is either this or not this. So I think in English, you'd say X. I hope that's correct. But yeah, you could also say it the Tibetan way. Whatever exists is either this or it's not this. Nothing can be both X and not X. Okay? That is a principle, and I think we can all agree that whatever exists is a table or not a table. Whatever exists is Shmuel or not Shmuel. Whatever exists, you can go on, as it says here, this principle applies to big, small, or anything else that exists. Therefore, an elephant cannot be both big and not big. All right, having said that, however, this does not contradict the fact that an elephant can be both big and small. Okay, you may go, okay, it can be both big and small, but it can't be big and not big. Yeah, but it's different because these attributes are relative to things that are bigger or smaller than it. So it can be big because they're smaller than it, and there's something, and it can be small. We can say it's small because they're in relation to something bigger than it. Even if the element is considered small and thus not big, compared to something larger, this does not negate its being big in general. Okay? Likewise, even though the elephant is small in general, this does not mean that it is not also big in general. Okay? So it's saying it's big and it's small. We can say in general it's both in relation to certain factors. But because it's small, it doesn't mean it's also not big. All right. Now, this may be a little bit like, but why not? If it's small, it has to be not big. No, it doesn't have to be. Only in relation to something. This is something, when you say something is not, I give you another example. We say an elephant exists, okay? But elephants are not everywhere. But still we say because an elephant exists in a particular place, we say it exists. But then I could argue, well, an elephant doesn't exist because it doesn't exist in particular places. Do you see what I'm saying? So just because it doesn't exist in my room, I'm not saying elephants don't exist in general. Why do I say elephants exist in general? Because they exist in a particular room. Because they exist in a particular place. Because elephants exist in a particular place, they exist in general. But if they don't exist in a particular place, it doesn't mean they're not existent in general. Do you see the parallel here? So similarly, although an elephant can be not big in relation to a mountain, that does not make the elephant not big in general. Okay, Shmuel? Does that make sense? I could have added this explanation about the elephant existing in a particular place qualifies for it to for saying it exists in general. But for the elephant to not exist in a particular place does not qualify for the elephant to be non-existent in general. In the same way, or in a similar way, this logic applies. It's like that with negations. All right? So this is coming down to Buddhist logic. Now, when you debate, that would be, I didn't write it out in the form of a debate. I just gave you the explanation, but it's not hard to grasp. Even if we were to debate it, it's not that difficult. Shmuel, does that make sense?
Well, it depends on what you mean by making sense. I think I see the point, but I sort of don't agree.
Okay, now that's fine. That's good. Go back and think about it, and think of the elephant, the place on the elephant. And if you don't agree, come up with your own version, which is good. Come up with your own version. Write it down. That's even better. It's easier to follow your train of thought. And think of what I said about the elephant. Don't forget about the elephant existing in a particular place, right? If the elephant exists in the particular place, we can say it exists in general. If the elephant is non-existent in a particular place, we cannot say the elephant is non-existent in general. An elephant, there's an elephant. Varda is showing us an elephant. Okay, does that make sense? Okay?
Okay.
So just that. And then you go back and think about it. And anyone else is very welcome to debate. You're not trained in debate yet, which means, and this is not just true for those not trained in debate. Even if you're trained in debate, it's always easier to go back and take your time and go through it again. Make some notes, write the argument down, and it'll become clearer in your mind. And come back to me next time and let me see what you think. All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so that was quite a bit of time we spent. I don't worry about getting through the text quickly or not quickly. That's not the point. The point is to address as many concepts as possible. And with your questions, you give me this opportunity. These are all great questions. I enjoy answering them, some in more detail and some in less detail. But yeah, they're all important. They all help us to gain our understanding or to enhance our understanding of the Dharma. Whether we go through a text or not, and we feel like, oh, I did this text or not this text. I mean, that's not the point. But I'll continue with the text anyway. All right. Now, I didn't prepare anything. Oh, this won't work. I didn't prepare anything this week simply because I did already last week. I didn't know we didn't have class. It was like a last minute thing. Canceling last week's class, and so yeah, I didn't prepare anything new. We still have enough material. I'll continue with new material next time. All right, great. What we discussed, I just changed the date, but I haven't sent it to delete yet. Oh, this is the wrong version. Never mind. Now I've got this version. The Tibetan doesn't show up, but that doesn't matter. In some version, it doesn't show up. I used the wrong one. Never mind. I'll send you the correct one later. Ooh, it's totally all over the place, but never mind. Okay, so we've been talking about the qualities we need to have in order to be a vessel for the Dharma. I wanted to summarize a little bit what we did so far, but I can do that next time. So, because we don't have that much time left, but a little bit about the qualities we need to do Dharma practice. Now, I only mentioned the qualities that Ayadeva mentioned in his 400 verses. I cited this verse from Ayadeva. Here we go. As well as the 2 qualities of Chandrakirti. But talking to someone a few days ago, just talking about the West and the difficulty of practicing in the West, there are other qualities, I think, that I didn't want to put in here because I'm just going to put in there what it says in the text. But it's kind of common sense. 2 qualities, I think, at least 2 that I can think of, that are important for Dharma practice. And in the West, we can have a hard time if we're missing these qualities. Now, don't get me wrong. Living in the West, being a Westerner, has a lot of advantages. There's no question about it. We have more opportunities in many cases, maybe more freedom, and so forth. Actually, to learn the Dharma, to practice the Dharma, there are definitely advantages to being a Westerner. But Asians, and in particular Tibetans, and this is also slightly changing with the modern life that Tibetans now experience, but in general, Tibetans have at least 2 very important, if not 3, very important qualities. One is they're very laid back. very laid back, and they have a great sense of humor. So things don't work out the way they want them. Okay, it's okay. Let's try again. Why get upset? It doesn't help. Very, very important quality. It's easily said, but it's difficult to do. This we really need to make an extra point. Things go wrong, take a deep breath. I always think of this song. I don't know why it's stuck in my mind. I don't listen to music, but this really good. You pick yourself up and keep trying. There is a song. It says the person singing the song keeps saying, pick yourself up and keep trying. This really stuck in my mind. I think it's such a good way of looking at things. Just pick yourself up. Just do it again, right? Just try again. So it's laid back, not having these unrealistic expectations. Okay, I'll give my best. I try. Okay, it didn't work. I'll try again. Don't give up. That's a very important quality. Number one. Number two, we are too sensitive. We are so sensitive in the West. I mean, having lived with some Tibetans, or like with my classmates, or, Tibetans, just living with Tibetans around me, they're really tough, actually. They're quite tough. They're not as sensitive. Oh, they called me this and that. They said I was stupid. I have to see my therapist. Like I'm exaggerating a little bit, of course. No, it's not like that. But we're so with the words we use, and I'm not saying we should not be careful with other people. Of course we should. If it hurts them, let's be very careful about the words we use. But for ourselves, I remember years ago, and many of you know this story. Maybe I told you also in this class, but anyway, someone once called me, a nun once called me bango, which is like saying you jerk, you idiot. And it really, really hurt me. And I was like, oh my God, you called me bango. And I went to my teacher and I was like, I was so upset. Oh my God, you called me bango. I knew it was an insult. And he was like, oh yeah, poor thing. Oh, that's sad. And then he was like, oh, can you get me some tea, bango? And he called me bango for 2 weeks and it was fine. Afterwards, it was like, it's just a word. What do I care? And our classmates, they gave each other like weird nicknames. And I didn't get a good one. I got monkey bum because my face was really red, especially at the beginning when I got here, the mountains, the water and everything. So they called me monkey bum. And one was called acne. And another one was called Hungry Ghost. So we didn't have nice nicknames, right? But it was all about it. They're just words. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make me a monkey bum, or it doesn't make me a hungry ghost or whatever, right? So Tibetans are quite tough. And, samsara is hard as it gets. I mean, it's already as hard as it gets. So why make life so difficult they're just, oh, they called me that. I mean, if they call me an idiot, if I am an idiot, okay, they just told me what I am. And if I'm not an idiot, they can call me idiot as much as they want. It doesn't make it true, right? And so in that way, Tibetans being so tough, many of the great practitioners, they're as tough as nails. So I'm not saying you can't become tough as nails just because you want to. That's like telling you don't sweat, it's like a natural response, but we can work on it. Therefore, I think these are also qualities we need to generate. First of all, be laid back and to be a little bit tougher, not as sensitive. It only hurts us what another person says if we keep obsessing over it and thinking about it all the time. If we just go, okay, they just called me idiot. Okay, IDIOT. It's just, where's the insult in any of the letters? It's not in there. There's no insult in the word itself, is what my mind makes of it, as an example. And then, one more thing is, of course, also to become aware how self-centeredness is very much a characteristic of our modern society. And again, to make an extra effort, but of course this is part of our Dharma practice. So Tibetans have a much greater sense of the community versus the individual. Really, it's a lot more community. What is better for most people involved, right? And maybe I'll have to step back. But that's part of Dharma practice in general, reducing self-centeredness. But yeah, to be aware, it is something that is very much part of the Western culture. It has become part of the Western culture and works especially hard. Anyway, so those three, becoming a little more laid back, tougher, and making more of an effort, the community versus. But this is all easily said and very difficult to do. Easier to say than said than done. But yeah, it's just as these qualities being unprejudiced and so forth, as we need to work on them, it takes time. It's a process. But if we know what to focus on, we're moving in the right direction. All right. Anyway, so this is all about qualities, the qualities that I wanted to discuss. Reliance here very much connects to taking refuge. So reliance on the Dharma is really taking refuge on the in the Dharma. And since one of the next topics in the Lamrim is reliance, it's nice, it fits with this. So Dharma here is the ultimate refuge, relying, of course, also on a qualified master like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and so forth. Service here in the form of, if they ever happen to ask us something, well, with His Holiness, there's less of an opportunity, but like Jadu Rinpoche, for instance, of course, to offer our service, but most importantly, to practice what they teach. That's the best offer. I'm not sure I read all this here. I may have. I don't remember now. But anyway, you can read it. I don't have anything to add here, but this relationship is important, and it's not physical. You don't have to meet them all the time. If you think of them, if you focus on them, that's like you're near them. You're near them, because these qualified masters, they have mental abilities, you may call it clairvoyance or whatever you want, that they're aware. If you rely on someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Kyabche Jadu Rinpoche, and so forth, they know if we think of them, if we devote ourselves to them, and we make this mental connection. And that is so important. It is so, so, so important, because it inspires us in the way, and it touches in a way in which nothing else can. So reliance on a realized being is really important. It just, affects our mind in a very, very special way. And again, even if we've never met them, it doesn't matter. All right. Anyway, so here in this case, these 5 qualities are the 5 qualities of the king. And we work towards them. We can work towards them. It doesn't mean we cannot practice the Dharma, but these would be qualities that would make our Dharma practice more effective. And we practice the Dharma to gain these 4 or 5 qualities, or even more qualities, as part of the process. And we deepen these qualities as we continue to practice, of course. Anyway, all right. So these are just some passages that help us to reflect on ourselves, on lacking these qualities or not lacking these qualities, having them in certain situations but not in others, etc. All right, but then to go back to the verse, so now I'm not going to really explain much. Oh, Orit, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I was reading and thinking about it, I thought about the example that they give about the vessel, the
vessel,
like the 3 pots, the
Mhm.
upside down, the holes,
Yeah.
and
Yes, that's true. Orit is making a good point, because there's also another explanation in terms of vessel, but here it's literally talking about a vessel. Yeah, so we shouldn't be, when we listen to the Dharma, this is mainly with regard to listening to the Dharma, whereas here the vessel applies to listening as well, but also practice. Yes, so don't be like a vessel turned upside down, not listening. Don't be like a vessel with a hole where you're distracted, so you listen to it, but you lose it right away, you forget it right away. Or like a dirty vessel, that's like being prejudiced. Yeah, it relates to that. Great, thank you. All right. What do I do now to get back to to get back to, am I still, the screen sharing, is that still going on? Oh,
No,
can you,
it's You're not sharing now.
Okay. Can you help me to get back?
Just you see the green slide that is reading.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I put everyone there. Now I see it. Yep, there it is. Okay, great. All right.
No, it's okay.
Now it's okay, right? Okay, great. Anyway, so this I'm not going to go through today. I can read it, but you can also read it at your own time. So might as well leave it because you're still supposed to tell me which. So does this refer to any of the Four Noble Truths? This Dharma? Does this Dharma refer to any of the Four Noble Truths? Does this refer to any of the Four Noble Truths? And does the fourth one refer to any of the Four Noble Truths? So that's your homework for next time. Think about it. Okay, great. And then we'll start with the actual text. Finally, the formatting is a little bit off, but this is just because I'm using the wrong version. But I won't be able to find the other one right away, so never mind. Now, these were the introductory verses, and as is traditional, you spent a lot of time with them. A lot of kind of groundwork is covered, and hopefully we won't spend that much time on the verses to follow. Now, Nāgārjuna now embarks on the detailed explanation of the actual subject matter. So how does he start? Well, he begins with an overview, also very typical, and it kind of makes sense to give you kind of a rough sense of what the text is all about. We heard about these four components, the subject matter, the temporary goal, the ultimate goal, and how these three are connected. But here more specifically, or in a little bit more detail, the author gives you an overview. And what does it mean? And what does that mean? What does that overview entail? Well, it describes higher rebirth and the highest good as the results to which we aspire by practicing the Dharma. Now, in this way, therefore, really Dharma practice is kind of figuring out your goal and then working towards it. And that is then followed by a brief outline of the primary and secondary causes that lead to each result. So first, okay, here's the result, and that's what you need to do to get there. Verse 3 teaches the sequence in which higher rebirth and the highest good are taught. So sequence is very important in Buddhism, as you can probably tell. It's important in the sense that things, of course, are presented in a particular sequence to know how the sequence is relevant. That is helpful. And if they're not presented in the right sequence, it can actually be, well, not necessarily harmful, but be confusing, in that way harmful, yes. Which is why a lot of emphasis is put on sequence. All right, the order of things. And we also learn about it. And it makes sense you learn about it. What determines the sequence of something? And again, I didn't have to give all this explanation here. To understand the Precious Garland, to understand this verse number 3, you don't need to have this explanation. But as I said, everything we learned, of course, it's all connected. And we learned about the order of arising. Why? We at some point, as in the study of Parchin, for instance, and the study of the ornament for clear realization, or Abhisamaya Alamkara, it came up and we learned about it. And in that way, this reminded me of this particular topic, so I just added it. So as much as I remember of what we studied, I just bring it in whenever there's any connection to that particular topic. And it's not hard, but it's good to mention it. So in general, the sequence in which the different Buddhist concepts, practices, or teachings are presented in the scriptures is carefully structured and typically determined by one of two key factors. So they're actually usually two key factors. It's the order of their arising and the order of their cognition. So if you have two concepts, why do you mention one concept, like in the text? Why is one concept explained before another? Well, either because that's their chronological order. First this arises and then that arises. So from that point of view, you say, yeah, from that point of view, you mention one first because it arises first and the other one second. I'll give you some examples in a minute. The second is the order of their cognition. Okay, the order of their cognition. Can you spontaneously think of something, of certain concepts in Buddhism that are presented in a particular order, usually always in the same order, from the point of view of their cognition? Very easy. Very easy, you'll know.
So you said the Four Noble Truths.
The Four Noble Truths, exactly. If you already read before, and then, yes, I mentioned it on the next page. Okay, so the order of their rising is their ontological sequence. So the way they exist, basically, the way they arise. I think you can call it ontological sequence. It refers to the sequence in which phenomena come into existence, either naturally, without us doing anything about it, just their nature, or through the structured practice of the Dharma. So an example of a natural progression is the sequence of the 12 links of dependent arising. They don't arise because we practice. So, we practice, therefore ignorance is first, and then compositional actions. No. It's just if you have ignorance, then it's followed by compositional actions, then consciousness, and so forth. If you're familiar with the 12 links, even if you're not of these 12, they always arise in a certain sequence. An example of the sequence through the practice of the Dharma is the progression from great compassion to bodhicitta, where the cultivation of great compassion precedes the development of bodhicitta, as it's not possible to cultivate bodhicitta without first generating great compassion. Okay, give me an example of a natural progression of a Dharma, of certain Dharma concepts that are presented in a particular order because that's how they naturally arise. Other examples?
Well, the 5 paths, the bhumis.
That's not the natural arising. That's through the Dharma practice. That would be an example for this one here. Yeah?
Like karmic seed and the results?
Yeah, very good. Causing effect. Yes, very good. Go ahead, Leora. You wanted to say something?
9 stages of developing shamatha.
That's again not here. This is like I'm talking about. I'm asking about a naturally, without practice of like a structured practice. You're right. So as Orit was saying, the 5 paths. You're saying the 9 stages of calm abiding. Those are all examples of a sequence through the practice of the Dharma. But what about the natural arising? So cause and effect. Orit is right. So we say it cause and effect. We don't say effect and cause, right? The cause always precedes the effect. All right.
Death.
Pardon?
Stages of death.
Very good. The stages of death. Yes. The death dissolution. Yeah, the 8 dissolutions. Great. Okay. Yep. These are all good examples. They're always presented in this order because they naturally rise that way. And as Leora just mentioned, the 9 stages of shamatha, they're an example of this this particular order, and of course, Orit said the 5 paths. All right, and now you have the order of their cognition, the epistemological sequence. It involves the pedagogical approach of presenting Buddhist concepts, practices, etc., in a way that corresponds to the practitioner's ability to realize and internalize them. Realize here, it can also mean to realize something means to attain something, but as you probably know by now, the word in the Buddhist context is usually used for cognizing something, knowing something incontrovertibly. So therefore, the epistemological sequence by which some phenomena are presented is based on the ability to realize and then, of course, internalize them. This sequence generally prioritizes simpler, more accessible teachings, laying the groundwork that will help practitioner grasp more complex and subtle concepts. Okay, examples other than the Four Noble Truths? Any examples? Anything you can come up with? It's also part of the study guide that I prepared. It's also asking for other examples in there. Can you think of anything spontaneously?
Selflessness of person before phenomena?
Selflessness of person before phenomena. Is it, yeah, yeah, you're right. It's usually explained before. Is it easier? Or yeah, that's actually a good example because, well, is it actually easier to realize selflessness of person than selflessness of phenomena?
That's what I've heard is like you're first taught like selflessness of, like in terms of deconstruction is like selflessness of phenomena, but for your own practice, somehow selflessness of person is easier to get at.
Okay, all right. Is it, you see, in the texts, it says it's not easier. They're equally difficult. I mean, they're equally difficult to understand. It's possible that in terms of your familiarity with one of the two could be easier, but that's different. In general, it's said that they're equally difficult. That's what the texts say. Okay. Now, why is selflessness of person described? So therefore, the reason that selflessness of person is described first is not because it's easier. We're not talking about a core selflessness. That's different. Lack of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self. That's different. So why is selflessness of person explained first? Anyone? Why is selflessness of person described first? Any idea? Shmuel, you raised your hand. Do you want to answer this or do you have another question?
Another answer to a question.
Okay. All right. First of all, anyone? Why is selflessness? In most cases, they say because it's easier to understand. With the Four Noble Truths, for instance, what is easiest to understand of the Four Noble Truths?
First one.
The first
one, right? Yeah. So it's easiest. Yeah, definitely. I don't know about the third one being easier than no. The third one is actually harder than, I'm not sure. Possibly harder because that's the actual attainment. But yes, of the first two, the first one is easier understood. Okay. Or it's necessary to understand it. It's debatable.
Why is the first noble truth easier to understand than the second noble truth?
Because, well, the thing is, what is easier, to know the symptom of a disease or the cause of a disease? Usually, in general.
Yeah, in the symptoms.
Yeah. So really, one reason is that the truth of suffering is the symptom of a particular cause. But if you go into particular types of suffering, there are, of course, some particular types of suffering that are more difficult than to understand some particular origins. But one thing that's also important, and we come to that, there's a difference between knowing, for instance, anger, which happens to be the second noble truth, right? Anger is an affliction, an afflictive emotion or an affliction. Therefore, it is the second noble truth. But just knowing it doesn't mean I know it's the second noble truth, right? You have to identify it as the origin of suffering. So that's different, right? We come to, this is part of the next topic we talk about. For instance, I can know an impermanent phenomenon such as table without knowing that it is impermanent. So I can know a particular truth of origin without knowing it is a truth of origin, right? But it's still a little bit complicated. It's yeah. I mean, the order is said to be easier in general, but it's debatable. It's definitely debatable. Jimmy, you raised your hand.
I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be the case that in general people think of the wrong cause of suffering because they know there is suffering, but they attribute it to the wrong cause? For example, lack of money or some ugliness or whatever. So they just don't get it.
Okay, yes, that makes sense. That makes, yeah, absolutely yeah, we understand the result, but we're mistaken with regard to the cause. We may blame others, etc. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, so in general, yes. But now, okay, with selfnesses of person and selfnesses of phenomena other than person, why selfnesses of person? Oh, this is the last thing I should say. Why is selfnesses of person mentioned before selfnesses of phenomena?
Well, it's just one, and it's closer.
It's just one?
One, selflessness of self.
But there's so
Yes,
many selves.
Yeah,
There's so many selves.
but I think it's referred to my.
Yeah, but there's yesterday's self and today's self, and there's the angry self, and there's the no, I'm just debating back, you know. Vada, go ahead.
Is it possible because the phenomena is mine, is connected to me, or through the mind, or through possession, as if in grammar, I don't know exactly how
I understand what you mean. I know what you mean. Like when we talk about, for instance, the self of phenomena, it's oftentimes described as that which is mine, like the 5 aggregates, right? Like the 5 aggregates. So it's oftentimes described in relation to that which belongs to the I. So before we can know what belongs to the I, we need to know the I. Yeah, okay, that's one point. And then B, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Just to contribute to this conversation here.
Yes, please.
I recall back when I first was thinking about selflessness of person. One day, according to the way my Gelug teacher explained to me, I was like, well, it's not the mind, it's not the body, it is merely an imputation. So I was stuck on that for a long time. You know, what do you mean mere imputation? A mere. And then one day I had this image that just came to my mind, like in the room, you know, there's all 30 people, and each of the person has an I in their mind. And that's the I. And that I can be a mere I, or it can be a very solid I. So it is easier to understand in a sense that the mere I, the conventional I, is not as closely tied to a solid thing that you can just see and touch, like a tree. What do you mean what do you mean mere tree and there's not you know, the tree is right there, you know. With a computer, we say that, oh, okay, somebody made a computer, and then I call it a computer. But tree is naturally a tree. So what do you mean? So yeah, so that was my process.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying that because the self is so difficult to even comprehend anyway, that there's much less of the sense of solidity versus a table that I look at, I can touch, I can smell, and so forth with my 5 senses. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I remember having this conversation with a friend who have gone through the master program with the Institute of Tsongkhapa, and she speaks Tibetan, so she's well-read, well-practiced and everything. And then she said, what the heck, mere I? What is this mere I? I was a bit taken aback. But yeah, I think a lot of, it's not this mere thing.
Okay, all right. It's interesting you're bringing this up. I mean, the thing is that usually it is said that they're equally difficult or equally easy, whichever way you look at it, equally difficult. But still, I think still there's something to what you were saying in terms of, yes, objects I see, I can perceive with my 5 senses. You know, I can smell them, I can touch them, I can even taste them. In that case, there's much more of a sense of solidity, and it's much harder to get a sense it's merely labeled. Yeah, I get that with the self. But of course, there are a lot of phenomena that are just as evasive as the self, right? The mind, for instance, like the mind, and that's a phenomenon. Therefore, the selflessness of the mind, then that's also really difficult. What is that mind, really, right? I mean, it goes as far as a lot of people saying there is no mind, there's only the brain. I mean, as this, at least for some time in modern science, there was this assertion there is no mind. It went as far. I mean, people had a mind and they said it wasn't there.
But that is true. But typically, speaking for myself, when I think about body and mind, it's enough for me that I can identify my body. I don't go further and look for my mind, you know. It's like they all roll into one. The body is there, then the mind is there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Okay. Anyway, so these are all interesting reasons for why it's explained first. I have another theory, and I'm not saying this is the only reason. I'm not saying that this is sorry, my laptop is my sorry, my iPad just acts up. Okay. So I'm not saying that this is the only reason, but this is how I learned it. And I have no scriptural source right now that I can think of. But the reason that I'm most familiar with is that we're so obsessed about the I. It's probably the thing we're most obsessed with. I mean, we think I a lot more often than my body, my mind, my friend, my family. And my included in my, I mean, grammatically you use mine, but it's of course saying the family, the friend of the I, the possession of the I. That's really when we say my, that's what it means, isn't it? And so therefore, because I is the center of the universe, we need to focus on that one first, because that's the real troublemaker. I think I mentioned this before on a different occasion. Sorry, we're a little bit, so we won't have time for meditation today, but never mind, we'll do it next time. But I think I mentioned this before, how fascinating that, oh yeah, we had this argument just not so long ago, but isn't it fascinating that I can have a sense there's an inherent I, and I'm very attached to this I, and at the same time I have a sense of an inherent Shmuel, but I'm not attached to Shmuel. I mean, of course, attachment to Shmuel can arise, but naturally I have an attachment to the inherently existent I, but not to an inherently existent other person. So there's definitely, although both persons are perceived as inherently existent, but it's this I, that's the center of everything. Isn't it the center of everything, of all phenomena? My own I is the most important. My mind is secondary to my I. Anyway, go ahead. You raised your hand. I'm not sure who was first, Shmuel or Varda. Shmuel was first. Okay, Shmuel, go ahead.
I just wanted clarification. When it says
Please.
that the sequence, considering the order of cognition, the order of cognition here means the order of incontrovertible cognition?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Or not just that, but also the order by which you think about them. I mean, it's also the order, like with the selflessness of person or selflessness of phenomena, they're presented because I guess in general, it's seen as a good idea that you start thinking about the selflessness of person first. It's oftentimes presented first. It's not in terms of you have to cognize one or the other first. You can cognize the selflessness of phenomena first. Some may, it's possible, but it's presented in terms of, yeah. So I wrote cognition, actually. I wrote cognition, but it can also mean the way you should think about it, the way you should start reflecting on this. You know, like when you introduce the idea of selflessness to someone who's totally new to the Dharma, you present selflessness of person first for that reason. Okay. All right. Then Varda, go ahead. Last question. Oh no, second last question.
There are two things. One, that I think we learned that when we know the emptiness of one thing, then we actually understand the emptiness of all the other things. Something came into my mind, and the other one is, I think it's a joke what I'm going to say now, but a person is one thing and phenomena are many. May that be a reason?
Yeah, someone else said that as well. Like the person is just one and phenomena are many. Well, we still have to realize the selflessness of phenomena other than the I, of other people as well, and that's still selflessness. It's not the kind of, yeah, it's still selflessness of person. So they're endless sentient beings, and in that way. But again, yeah, you're right. In general, when we talk about selflessness of person described before selflessness of phenomena, it usually refers to the I. So it could be because, yeah, that could be another reason. It's easier just in terms of numbers. Yeah, absolutely. There was something else I wanted to say and I forget now. Yeah, I don't remember now. Yeah. Please go ahead, Jimmy. You raised your hand. Did you?
Because we're running out of time, maybe I write it down and send it in an email. Is that all right?
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you want, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
I think we finished now.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Do they have also, like in the West, the importance? Like the first, what comes first is more important, the one comes second, and so on?
In the West, it exists as well. Are you saying that?
Yeah, most of the thing is.
Yeah, it kind of
like order of importance.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's certain, of course, we have the sequence of things are also mentioned, and it's all common sense. It's not new to us. You're right. There's certain sequences. Yeah, sometimes you describe something first because it's more important, and this would be one thing. I mean, understanding or thinking about selflessness of person is more important, or we should start with that. Yeah, but of course, not everyone does. It's like sometimes you just talk about the lack of inherent existence of the table to introduce emptiness.
Well, I wasn't referring to this dilemma, just in general.
Just in general, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I've just said that in general, we start with the simpler, like the first degree of suffering, second, and the most complicated one, the third. So we can understand.
Yeah,
so the most important one is the third.
Yeah.
Studied last.
That's true. That's true. Very true. Yeah. Very good.
Or the most important is me. So we start.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
Actually, when we started to learn about it, I thought how rare and how strange, because to say that the table is a lack of inherent existence, it's easy. But to say that I am inherent, that's something.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just the opposite and not this way.
Right. I think it's different for everyone. I mean, some may think it's more difficult, some may think it's easier. So it just depends on the person. Anyway, this is, of course, pretty flexible, because just because it is presented in a certain way doesn't mean it cannot be presented in a different way as well. But it's just interesting to look at the sequence to better understand why, well, the concepts that are to come are explained in a particular sequence. So it's not really hard. And we can definitely finish with that topic next time. But something that comes up, and it may be helpful to read in advance, is when you realize, for instance, when you understand, if you cognize liberation, if you realize liberation, not attain liberation, but just understand what it is, you have to realize emptiness first. And so this is an important concept that I mentioned in here, and you may want to read in advance just for better understanding. All right, great. Now we're done. So there was no time for meditation. We'll have that next time. And all that's left is the dedication. Now let's take a moment to collect ourselves, to focus on this very important part of the lesson, dedicating whatever virtue we've accumulated by thinking, well, first of all, for the benefit of all sentient beings, may whatever positive potential we accumulated as a group, may this cause us to realize selflessness, realize emptiness, in order to eliminate the obscurations and reach the fully enlightened state of a Buddha. And in the meantime, may also cause our great spiritual masters, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and like all the other great living masters we have the great fortune to have among us, may they have a long and healthy life to continue to guide us. But may this root virtue also positively, in whichever subtle way, positively affect everyone else around us, positively affect our families, those suffering from physical problems, from mental problems. But of course, very important, may also stop all the conflicts that are going on in the world right now. Stop all the killing, the injuries, the destruction. May all this end. And may those who were separated from their family reunite with them again without causing such great suffering through the separation. All right. So let's dedicate for this, thinking about this while we recite the prayer or the prayers. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings, without exception, into the enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. O powerful Shinrezig Denzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, thank you very much, and have a great week.
Thank you, Geshe-ma. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, DFI.
And Geshe-ma, you send the death procedure to the lead?
Yes, I'll send everything to the
Yeah,
lead.
she will send it to me and I will publish on the WhatsApp group. And
Great.
those who doesn't have it, I always send them by mail.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hope your dad feels better soon.
Thank you.